The following presentation was made possible by the Altek Media Group, a Southern California multimedia company providing exponential branding and marketing services to all their clients. The Altek Media Group understands the value of the 3W strategy, providing their clients proven, trackable results. Let us make it easy for you to grow your business. Visit altekmedia.com.
We'll start off. I've got a lot to say, so I'm going to talk fairly fast because there's a lot of slides to cover here. So we're always happy to be here. This is a great event grown from the chamber in the city, and we really appreciate the opportunity to come up here and work with you. So we're going to start. There we go. Start with just a general overview of the housing market right here. The top line is for Southwest California. This is the 9-city region that we work with down here: Temecula, Murrieta, Lake Elsinore, Wildomar, Menifee, Hemet, Perris, and San Jacinto. So you can see that these are September numbers, so you can see that actually our sales have slowed a little bit heading into last year. The end of the year, that's not unusual. That's happened both across the region and a little bit in Murrieta. But the good thing is that sales are still up over last year. We'll probably end the year about 3% ahead of where we were last year. More on that in just a minute. Median home prices, of course, continue to rise. They were down a little bit month to month, and again, that kind of tends to plateau toward the end of the year. But in general, prices are up over last year as well. Inventory is a sore spot. Inventory is down. We're averaging about a month and a half to 2 months pretty much across the region. A normal inventory is considered to be 6 to 7 months. We haven't had a normal inventory of homes for sale for about the last 5 years. And homes are pretty much flying off the market in about 2 to 3 weeks. So the market is what you would consider fairly healthy. It also seems to be fairly sustainable pretty much across the board. If we look at what's happening in the state of California, again, the same thing that you're seeing played out in our local market. Sales are strong, but they haven't increased appreciably over the last few years. And actually, year over year, they're up just very, very slightly. Same thing's happening in Murrieta. Up very, very slightly, been up slightly the last 4 or 5 years in a row. If things hold true to form through the end of the year, I'm forecasting this year housing sales for Murrieta will probably be our best year since about 2010. So that's a good thing, as long as we continue on the improvement track. Prices again through the state of California, you see that back in May of '07, we hit a peak for the state, $594,000. 18 months later, that was $245,000. We dropped almost 60% off our peak pricing there in a span of about 18 months. And since then, it's been kind of we had 2 or 3 years where it was fairly stable there, and then it continued to climb back up, and we've had a number of years of good positive trending growth, and that's certainly continued in the last year. Same thing happened in Murrieta. We hit a high sales peak of, the pricing was up about $535,000. That dropped to $265,000 2 years later when the market totally collapsed on it. We've climbed back 41%. And again, this year our median price in Murrieta will probably be up about 6 or 7% over last year. That's been the average for the last 5 years in a row. So again, that's good sustainable growth. It's not like it was in the early 2000s. For those of you who were here between 2000, 2005, 2006, we were appreciating at about 30% a year. You can't maintain that indefinitely. So, but if you're going up 6, 7% a year, you're actually in pretty good shape. Unfortunately, it hasn't brought us back yet to where we were at our high point. We're getting closer, but we're still down about 17%. That's true pretty much across Riverside County. That's down about 17% under our peak price. But again, it's climbing back, and there's no indication that that's going to stop anytime soon. September median prices, you can see that Murrieta there was up 8% over September of 2016. Most of our cities were up, again, anywhere from 5 to 7, 8%, 12%, 10%, and some of the smaller markets where there's still lower end, more affordable housing. Those markets are appreciating faster. Once you get up in that $400,000 or $500,000 range, it's hard to appreciate as quickly as when you're selling homes for $200,000, $250,000. So we are tending to plateau a little bit, but still rising a little bit year over year. Transaction value, what housing sales per month bring to our region, typically about $300 to $400 million worth of sales every month for the 9-city region. So housing does contribute. Sales tax, transfer fees, and so forth all contribute to our local city and county coffers on that. People always say, well, I know what a median price is, I know what an average price is, but what does that mean exactly in terms of what the house looks like? So if I went back to last month and looked at the average house in Murrieta, the average house was about 2,438 square feet. It was built in 1999. It was a 4-bed, 3-bed house, and it sold for about $435,000. The average house in Murrieta looked exactly like that listing on Buttonbush that sold back in September. List price at $435, sold for $434. They really knocked the price down a lot on that. It was built in 1996, 4-bed, 3-bath, 2,435 square feet. So that's what the average house looks like. If you sometimes get confused between median and average price, the average price is when you throw all the sales into the hopper and then divide it by the number of sales. That gives you what the average sales price was. Median sales price, on the other hand, is half the homes sold for a higher amount, excuse me, and half the homes sold for less. So those numbers vary a little bit, typically depending on the number of high-end homes. When you have an area like Murrieta that has homes up in La Cresta, for example, or Temecula that has homes back in the wine country and up in Duluth that have a number of homes that sell for over $1 million, that skews your average price upward, typically higher than what the median price is going to be. If you have areas where the homes are pretty much in that $300,000 range, then your median and average price are going to be almost identical. So, what are we looking for down the road? I have no idea. There's a number of good indicators out there, and we just got back from Chicago here about a week and a half ago, where we talked to our national chief economist and a number of folks who supposedly know what's going on with the economy. So when we look at California, for example, and the rest of the country, unemployment is down. That's a good thing. It's continued to fall. We are a little bit higher here. Riverside County is about 6.5% compared to California at 5.1%, and the rest of the country at about 4.2%. Murrieta is down there on the bottom. Murrieta is actually very close to California. Last month it was about 5.2% as well. So we are reaching essentially what the feds consider to be full employment in our market. That's good, that's healthy. Mortgage rates, lowest since the election. You know, in spite of the Fed raising the rate a couple times so far this year, expect one more in December probably, but that has not impacted housing mortgage rates significantly. They're still at pretty much record lows. They're up a little bit over the absolute bottom, but still holding. You can get a mortgage right now for around 4%. That will probably creep up, but mortgage rates continue to be very, very low. Stock market. If any of you got money in the stock market, you know we've hit a number of record closes just since the first of this year. They refer to it as the Trump bump. And it's, corporations are feeling better. Profits are up. There's a general sense of optimism. And so the stock market continues to climb. Those are all good indicators. The problem, of course, remains supply, not just in Murrieta, not just in California, where it's reached such a crisis stage that even the people in Sacramento realize we have a problem. It's also reached a problem across the country. There's simply not enough homes out there for people to buy. And so you can see the spike back there in 7 and 8 when things really weren't selling. We had the same thing happen here. We had a lot of homes on the market, about 8 to 10 months inventory. As I mentioned earlier, we're down to about a month and a half right now. You can see Southern California, our inventory year over year continues to decline as it has in Murrieta. That's because we're not building homes at the rate that we need to. We need to add about 180,000 dwelling units per year just to keep up with population growth. We've built well under that for the last decade. So we're missing about 1 million homes from our market right now, about 70,000 a year over the last 10, 12 years. So that's something that needs to be addressed because as housing prices increase and lack of inventory, you've got high demand, you've got low supply, prices are shooting up, That impacts, obviously, housing affordability. And what we're looking at is not just housing affordability in general, but what we refer to as workforce housing, affordable workforce housing, which houses folks like our teachers, our police, our fire, our realtors, our children, okay? They don't have those options in California anymore. You can see that in the United States, housing affordability is about 55%, meaning that 55% of people who make a median wage can afford a median price home in their community. In California, that's only 29%. In Riverside County, we're currently about 39%. 5-6 years ago, that was about 62%. So we've fallen a long ways in the last 5-6 years. The good news from this slide is our feeder communities, people that come here who work in San Diego, Los Angeles, and Orange County, are coming here because housing is even less affordable over there. Orange County, 26%. San Diego County, 28%. Orange County, 21%. And I was just talking to Pat Kelly about kids moving to San Francisco. Only 12% of people can afford a median price home up there. Median price home in San Francisco right now, by the way, is about $1.4 million. So you can rent a one-bedroom apartment up there if you're lucky for about $4,000 a month. So it's a little tricky finding housing in San Francisco. Home ownership, obviously the lack of affordability has contributed to a big drop in home ownership in the state of California. We're currently about 10% below the national average. Only about 53% of people in California are actually home owners anymore. If the trend continues the way it has for the last decade or so, within 5 to 8 years, California will become a renter state. And that has some very serious implications for overall things, because renters tend to vote differently than homeowners do. It'll impact schools, it'll impact property taxes, it'll impact Prop 13, it'll impact any number of things. So this is a concerning demographic right here. California currently ranks second lowest in the country, behind only New York in terms of the rate of home ownership for the state. The problem, of course, supply is the solution. We simply need to get more homes to market, both single-family and multifamily homes. Why isn't California building enough? Well, because community resistance, number one. You want to build something, particularly talk to the city folks. If you ever get a project coming forward that wants to build affordable multifamily homes, what happens? People line up 10 deep at the podium and go, yeah, we understand you really need it, but not in my backyard. And so that's part of the problem we run into in California. Commercial development, again, talk to the city folks. What brings in more money? We all know that rooftops don't pay for themselves. You need more commercial development. You need those big taxes. You need the retail development. So they tend to favor commercial development over housing. Limited land, both Murrieta and Temecula are approaching build out. And so we have limited land, but that's true across the state as well. And of course, project reviews, CEQA delays, and so forth and so on. Riverside County being one of the most affordable in the state, actually, certainly in Southern California, but it's still going to cost you between $75,000 and $100,000 per unit, depending on what city you're building in, before you even put a stick of wood on the ground, okay? That's just for the entitlements, that's acquisition, that's to get through the CEQA process and all that. So it's very, very difficult when you start out with a tab of $100,000. It's very difficult to build an affordable home on top of that. So that's why another reason that we're not doing that. Let's talk politics for a minute before we finish it off here. Obviously, federal fiscal policy right now is a concern. Economic stimulus, the tax reform package, you're aware of that going through. I believe the House is voting on their package today. It's been in markup. It's under consideration. There's good and bad points about that. And so the House will vote on it today. The Senate's got a slightly different bill that they're looking at. That will obviously impact not only our economy, our corporations, wages, jobs, but it will also have a significant impact on housing. Dismantling Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank was something that probably never should have happened. It was a knee-jerk reaction to the housing collapse back in 2007, 2008. What it has done is really stifled the banking and lending economy. And so they are loosening that up. That will probably result in more mortgage products for consumers. It will loosen lending standards. Obviously, the concern on that, the downside to that is when you loosen lending standards, we don't want to get back to the point where we were in 2005, where if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan for 5 times what you made on an annual basis. That was a little bit concerning also. We need to try to avoid that. Reform of the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who currently underwrite about 85% of loans out here and provide secondary market liquidity. There's talk about privatizing those organizations, raising interest rates and so forth. So again, that's a concern that will impact the housing market going forward. And of course, changes coming at the Fed. We know there's going to be a new Fed chair next year. He apparently votes similarly to what Janet Yellen does right now. But again, there's always a little bit of unsettling period when you get a new chair in there and see what they're going to do, and again, how the rest of the economy is going to perform, allowing them to increase taxes or increase interest rates and so forth, depending on what comes out of the tax reform package. Some wild cards at the federal level, of course, trade policy, what's going to happen with trade. That impacts us here. Border adjustments, tariffs and so forth. Consumers are going to be paying higher prices on imported goods, higher inflation, higher interest rates. Other wild cards, obviously healthcare reform, which failed so far this year, but that's again something going forward that will tap everybody's pocket a little bit depending on what they do with that. Immigration policy, H-1B visa program, that impacts us here in terms of investment, particularly in some commercial retail development here. And then of course policy by tweet. And that's always a little bit unsettling. You wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, what happened last night? California always has, we're kind of special out here. We have some special circumstances, and of course the impact of the recently imposed gas tax. That will have an impact on our residents, and if prices get too high, we'll see the same thing we did back in 2007, 2008 again, with people having to determine, based on the price of gas, whether they can afford to live here or if they need to abandon their home here and move closer to work down in San Diego County, North San Diego County, and so forth. So the price of gas always impacts our market a little bit because we are still, unfortunately, about 60% a commuter community. The fiscal impact of the sanctuary state, whether the Fed's actually cutting money to us or whether law enforcement has to increase their ranks in order to comply with this or in order to combat any potential increases in crime that result of that. Diff and TUM fees. I talked earlier about the prices of building a home. Our cities have recently increased their diff fees, their development infrastructure fees, and WRCOG, Riverside County, has increased their TUM fees, their transportation uniform mitigation fees. That all adds again to the price of housing, $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 to each structure in order just to get a product built. Housing fix bills, the governor just signed a package of 15 housing fix bills in Sacramento that went through the legislature. For the most part, they will do anything but fix the ability to more affordably build homes, the ability to expand homes when you have things like inclusionary zoning, rent control, prevailing wage, and those sorts of things. It doesn't help build more affordable homes when you're adding to the cost of building a home. We're going to have a new governor next year. I'm telling people, they're going, oh, thank God we get rid of Jerry Brown. 4 or 5 years from now, you're going to be looking back on the Jerry Brown days as the good old days. Trust me on that. Supermajority up in Sacramento, one of the problems we have, we don't have a balanced two-party system up there. There's no checks and balances, okay? And that will, again, probably, unfortunately, continue under the end of the new election. So that will impact, the way bills get passed up there, particularly bills that impact our local businesses, impact our ability to build affordable homes. Going forward, U.S. Economic Outlook, again, this comes from our state chief economist, forecasting this year a GDP of about 2.1%. I personally think that's a little low. The last 2 quarters have been over 3%, as Donald Trump promised. He's going to bring it back to between 3 and 4%. We've actually seen the last 2 quarters in excess of 3%. So I think their forecast at 2.1 for the year is probably a little conservative, and hopefully next year as well, we will continue to exceed that. Unemployment will remain low. The real disposable income for folks will go up, and 30-year fixed mortgage will go up a little bit, but still be pretty competitive going forward. California housing market outlook, as you see, their forecast is this year a very slight increase in sales and an even less of an increase next year, but still trending in the right direction. Median price, they're looking at, again, this year going up about 7%, which we will see here locally as well. They're forecasting only about a 3.4% increase for next year. Keep in mind that when you have areas like San Francisco where the median price is $1.4 million, they are already plateauing, and in some cases in Santa Clara, San Jose, and so forth, their prices have actually started to step back a little bit. So when you have an adjustment downward of a median price of $1.4 million, that leaves more room for the rest of us to increase. So I don't see anything here locally that means we're going to back off of a 5, 6, 7% median price increase for next year. Housing affordability index will continue to decline as prices go up. 30-year fixed mortgage, again, will go up slightly. They asked for 3 goals for the next 18 months. Meaningful federal tax reform would be a very nice thing to see. We'll see if that happens or not. You know, anytime you try to get tax reform in place, you have all these different constituencies out there that are all fighting for their piece of the pie. Yes, you need to eliminate all these loopholes, except for my loophole. The realtors are going, yes, you need to reform all this stuff, but don't touch mortgage interest deduction, don't touch capital gains. So everybody's got an axe to grind, and it makes it very, very difficult to actually have meaningful tax reform. Another goal, of course, is to reestablish a bipartisan legislature in Sacramento. This is more of a pipe dream than an actual goal. That's not going to happen, folks. And the last thing, a takeaway from this, is that according to everybody I've spoken with, we're not looking at any sort of a housing bubble building, at least over the next couple of years. Prices continue to go up, but it's a sustainable growth rate. We're not looking at any real bubble for the next couple of years. So if you want to buy a house, now would be the time to do it. If you haven't refied yet at a low rate, now would probably be a good time to do it. And our market here is very strong. It's very sustainable. It seems to be that way going forward across our 9-city region. So we're excited about being in the housing market here. We hope you are too. Thank you for coming out this morning. Look forward to answering any questions you might have.
The following presentation was made possible by the Altek Media Group, a Southern California multimedia company providing exponential branding and marketing services to all their clients. The Altek Media Group understands the value of the 3W strategy, providing their clients proven, trackable results. Let us make it easy for you to grow your business. Visit altekmedia.com.